Hello and welcome back. Let's learn about custom endpoints. We have already learned about custom endpoints by going through the post controller class. In the post controller, if you take a look at the register routes method, you can see how we can register custom endpoints for our custom post types or the default posts using the register REST route method. If you remember, in one of our previous videos under the shadow taxonomy concept, we have introduced a utility shadow taxonomy. This shadow taxonomy is used to connect the movies to the persons that have worked on them. For instance, these are the actors that are available in our movie library. And using the shadow taxonomy, we are able to create a two-way connection between the actors and the movies that they have acted in. However, filtering the movies by actors using the meta query will be time consuming and could probably be problematic because it's stored in a serialized format in post meta. So we have registered the utility taxonomy to make things easier for us. Now, instead of modifying the default endpoint that was our default movie endpoint, what I have done is registered a custom endpoint here. I have called the register REST route method, which requires a namespace, and the namespace should be unique based on your plugin or package. Here, I have used the movie library, that is the plugin name, and v1 because this is the first version. Maybe next time, if I want to update this callback from register REST route, or maybe I'll change the response, then I'll use v2 instead of v1. I'll also keep the v1 as well so that old route can also work if it has been used somewhere and it won't break anything. In the REST route, we provide the route. Here I have provided filter-movies, which is my other route under the movie library v1 namespace. Then for the other arguments, we have to pass the arguments as well as override. If the same route has been available and if you want to override, then you can pass override to true. Otherwise, we keep it to false. In the arguments, I have passed methods, that is WP REST server readable. You can pass multiple methods if you want to filter the same REST route with multiple methods like get and post. Currently, it should only be readable, so I have provided WP REST server readable, which is the get method. Then in the callback function, I have passed the callback function, and permission callback, I have simply returned true. Permission callback has been required since version 5.5. If the permission callback is not set, even if it's true, then it will throw a doing it wrong notice. So we have passed a permission callback explicitly, and I have passed it to true because it's readable and anyone can make ST API call to get and filter movies based on person ID, person post ID, or person post slug. But if you want to allow some other users only, then you can add a permission callback here. You can create an inline function or add a function which will return and check whether the current user can or not. If you want to learn more about it, in the already provided REST routes, you can see the permission callbacks, get items permission checks, and create item permission check. If you check out its definition, it is checking whether the ID is empty or not. It is fetching its post type and then checking whether the author has the required permission, if it's sticky, authenticate if the user is allowed to do so or not. You can check whether the IDs exist or whether the current post can be accessed by author and anything. You must always explore the default controller, post controller, term controller, and user controller to know more about how they have registered a REST route, how they are using the schema, how they have used the permission callback and sanitization callback. Regarding sanitization, in our custom endpoint, we haven't used any sanitization callback, but you can use it here with the arguments. You can also provide validation callbacks here as well. In our case, it's just the method callback as well as permission callback. When this REST route or method is executed, the MLB movie REST callback method will be called. And here in this function, the request object, that is of WP REST request class, is received. Here first, I'm getting the parameters using getParams. If any parameter is passed as a body in the post method, then you'll use the getBodyParams function. But all the functions you can learn about and explore in the WP REST request class. Next, I'm checking whether the ID parameter exists. If it is not numeric, I'll simply assign it a value of 0 to make it an integer. This also validates and sanitizes the ID. For the slug, I'm checking if it is empty. I'm allowing the filtering of movies by these two values, either directly by ID or by the slug. Then for the per page parameter, I'm checking how many movies we want to fetch in a single call. If it exists but is not numeric, I'm keeping the default value as 10 or whatever value is passed for the per page parameter. If both the ID and slug parameters are empty or invalid, I'll simply return a 400 error to the user informing that either the ID or slug parameter must be provided to filter the movies. Now I check again if the ID or slug is valid. Let me show you by going through the taxonomy utility. If you remember, we have created terms like this in the shadow taxonomy video. We have set up the taxonomy anyway, so we need an ID. If the ID has not been passed, it means the slug has been passed. I have then used the getPageByPath function, which works for any custom post type. I pass the slug object of the person post type, so if that slug exists in the person post type, it will return the post object. If the ID is not empty, I will directly get the post object using getPost. Again, I'll check whether the object has been found and if it is an instance of WP post class. If it is not, it means the past ID or slug is invalid and the person or post doesn't exist. I will then throw a 404 error with the appropriate message saying that the invalid ID or slug parameter has been passed. If the ID is valid, I then call the MLB getMovies by person. This method accepts ID and per page. Inside this function, I have created a new WP query that performs a text query based on the slug. And I have passed the terms value as person-%d, that is the person ID. If you remember in the taxonomy, we have created the post similar to that person-the ID of the person. So I have dynamically constructed the format for person ID. These terms are assigned to the movie post. By assigning and checking these terms, the movies are filtered based on the text query. If there are results, I return specific fields such as ID, title, link, and excerpt, not the complete information. Then in the end, we'll use the REST ensure response function because we need to return the WP REST response class object to the server. If you navigate to our custom route, which is movie library -v1 filter movies, you can test the functionality. If no parameters that are required are passed, the API will return an error with the status 400 saying you need to define either the ID or slug parameter. Now let's test this with a valid ID. Let's say I want to test this with this person object, then I'll pass the ID 5. If I pass the parameter ID equals 5, it will return me the movies that this person has acted in. That is, these two movies are associated with the person with the ID 5. We can also pass the slug of this person as we have also added this functionality. If I pass the slug to the REST API by passing the slug parameter, it will return me the same response. This approach allows you to register a custom REST route to achieve the functionality that you want to implement. Since REST API is now a part of WordPress core, earlier we used to use admin Ajax for a synchronous request. We can now use the REST API for such purposes. For example, we can fetch specific data asynchronously and display it on the front end. If you refer to the handbook page, you can find more information about topics like namespacing. Namespacing is essential to avoid conflicts. For example, it is not recommended to use WP/v2 as namespace because it could lead to overriding. The handbook also explains how to return values, how the responses should look like, what is the use of permissions callback, as well as the discovery feature ensures that the REST route is discoverable in the front end. You can also learn about the WP REST controller pattern and how you can create custom controllers. For example, if your use case requires functionality beyond default post or taxonomy controllers, you can extend the WP REST controller to create your custom controller for unique needs. After that, you can go through the adding custom endpoints section as well. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Jai WordPress.